You're listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network.
You're listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast, the most listened to daily Miami Dolphins podcast on the internet. Come on, Dolphins fans. Time to fins up.
All right, Miami! Miami's got the Dolphins, the greatest football team. We take the ball from goal to goal like no one's ever seen. We're in the air, we're on.
Good evening, Miami Dolphins fans. How are you today? And thank you for listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast on this Saturday evening, March the 16th. I am your host, Mike Oliva, flying solo tonight. As we got some news in the world of the Miami Dolphins. They re-signed a wide receiver. They're talking about re-signing another. And I'm going to spend some time later on in the show talking about both Miami's offensive line and their defensive line, where it sits today, 1 week into free agency, and what I think they need to do to get ready for the 2024 season on both lines of scrimmages. But before we get to any of that, as always, a big shout out to everyone listening at FinHeaven.com. Everyone go to FinHeaven.com, the largest Miami Dolphins message board on the internet. Also, a shout out to our friends at the I Am a Miami Dolphins fan Facebook page, run by the great and talented Carlos Hernandez. If you're on Facebook, please be sure you are part of the I Am a Miami Dolphins fan Facebook page. And wherever you're listening to this podcast, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Podbean, Podchaser, Audible, or one of the other hundreds of platforms you're on, subscribe. We've had shows each and every day this week, some days multiple shows. When it comes to the offseason, DolphinsTalk.com and the podcast network has you covered like no other outlet. We will talk about every transaction, every move. We've talked about the rumors, the rumblings, and that will continue moving forward. As we're only 1 week into free agency, there's a lot more to cover. And then we'll transition over to the draft talk. The Dolphins actually have some picks this year on night 1 and 2 with pick 21, pick 55. We'll get you ready then and prepare you to what Miami might do with each pick. So you won't want to miss a show this offseason. So subscribe to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network wherever you listen on any platform. Hit that subscribe button now. Oh, wait. Hit it. Okay, you hit it. Let's get back to the news. Let me start with this. Jerome Baker signed with the Seattle Seahawks, 1 year, $7 million. It's not a lot of money. So it makes you think Miami really didn't want him back. I can only imagine the offer they sent to Jerome. It had to be less than this for Jerome to say no and want to hit the open market. So Anthony Weaver and the Dolphins clearly did not want Jerome Baker back, which is fine. He has a new vision for that side of the ball, and maybe Jerome Baker didn't fit. Like I said, all week on the shows I've done, I'm going to give Anthony Weaver the benefit of the doubt until there's reason not to. So he's got a vision for this side of the ball. He wants to bring in his guys to execute his plan, his vision. That's cool. But it seems like Jerome Baker wasn't cut over money. Seems like Miami just really didn't offer him anything realistic to want to bring him back. And, it kind of plays out funny now. The Dolphins bring in Jordyn Brooks from Seattle. Seattle brings in Jerome Baker from Miami. And now we got a nice little subplot here to follow in 2024. Which team made the right move? Because you look at what Miami did this week at linebacker. They lost Andrew Van Ginkel and Jerome Baker. They bring in Shaq Barrett and Jordyn Brooks. Shaq Barrett, an edge rusher, I think brought in to replace Andrew Van Ginkel. Both guys can get after the quarterback. That's their primary skill set. They're coming in. Jordyn Brooks was brought in to replace Jerome Baker. So that's why we have something to follow here in 2024 with the subplot. Like I said, Jerome Baker got 1 year, $7 million. Jordyn Brooks got 3 years, $26.25 million, $16 million guaranteed from the Dolphins. So Miami paid Jordyn Brooks more, gave him, it's a 3-year deal, which is essentially a 2-year deal to replace him. So we'll see if Miami made the right call, but Jordyn Brooks is where they're going. He has more speed. He's a better coverage linebacker. But as I said at the end of last year, I love Jerome Baker. I am a huge fan of Jerome Baker. The night Miami played Kansas City in the wild card game, Jerome Baker obviously got hurt the week before versus the Bills, couldn't play, was on social media saying, the guy had a broken arm, couldn't play. He goes, I feel like I let my team down. I just want to be out there so bad. He was one of the leaders on this team, especially on defense. It's going to be sad to see Jerome Baker go. But again, I understand this is Anthony Weaver's. Right now, this is his defense, and he's making some calls. So I get it, but still sad to see Jerome go and wish him all the best up there in Seattle. Other news, the Dolphins re-signed Braxton Berrios. 1 year, $3 million, so it's not huge money. Can't get worked up over it. But I got to be honest, I don't love the move. Not a big fan of this move. Braxton Berrios will be 29 in October. Obviously spent 2023 with the Dolphins. In 2023, he had 27 receptions for 238 yards, 1 touchdown. And he was Miami's primary punt and kickoff returner. For his career, he's had 134 receptions for 1,323 yards, 6 touchdowns. He's had 90 career punt returns for 1,002 yards, no touchdowns. He's had 85 career kickoff returns for 2,108 yards and one touchdown. Last year in Miami, in my opinion, he provided no spark to the return game. And as a wide receiver, I saw a guy, it's my opinion now, who couldn't get open and couldn't get any separation. I know, amongst some, especially on the very vocal social media outlets and platforms, there's a narrative out there that Braxton Berrios is good. He just wasn't used right by Mike McDaniel last year, and if Mike McDaniel uses him correctly, he can be a weapon. That's fine. I respectfully disagree with that. I don't see it that way. Number one, if that's the case, to me, that's a huge red flag that our head coach / play caller can't figure out how to use Braxton Berrios, and we have larger problems than Braxton Berrios and his production. Number two, I didn't see that on the field last year. I saw a guy who, if he could have got open and he could have created some separation, would have been throwing the ball, but he couldn't. And I know there's also this notion now that, Miami's third wide receiver and who's going to fill that role. It's like, don't worry about it. We got Jonnu Smith. Well, Jonnu Smith's a tight end. And for 2 years, I saw Mike McDaniel, not dial up any plays for the tight end. And his first year here, he did have Mike Gesicki, who, was a threat in the passing game. Maybe, obviously, he couldn't block well. And now I'm supposed to think in year 3 and overnight, Mike McDaniel's going to change his whole, mindset and how he does things and utilize Jonnu Smith. I think Jonnu Smith's going to have a role. I think he'll be utilized some in the passing game, but I don't think he's the third option in the passing game now. And that's why, there is a subset of fans and of people in the media who think, don't worry about Miami's number 3 wide receiver. We got Jonnu Smith. I'm not signing up for that. Because what I saw last year was when Waddle went down and missed games, the offense struggled. When Hill went down, missed 1 game, and then he came back and was far less than 100% and was out there just playing on heart, emotion, and guts, the offense struggled. And at the end of the year, when they were both out there less than 100%, the offense wasn't the same as it was in September, October, and even early November. I think wide receiver 3 for Miami is important. Now, again, if Braxton Berrios is here to be wide receiver 4 or wide receiver 5 and a kick returner, fine. It's not the end of the world. Again, 1 year, $3 million. Not getting worked up over it. But if the plan is he's going to be, our wide receiver 3 because we have no money to really spend on a true wide receiver 3, and he doesn't want, and by he, I mean Chris Grier, doesn't want to use a pick and run 1 or 2 on a wide receiver, then that's not good in my opinion, and I disagree with it. But Braxton's back is what it is. It also came out reported from Aaron Wilson, NFL Insider, that Robbie Chosen Anderson, Robbie Ann, or whatever the hell his name is this week, visited with the Dolphins on Friday. Again, much like with Braxton Berrios, I don't get it. Now, he hasn't signed, but Chosen last year played 9 games in 2023. He started none, had 4 receptions in 9 games for 126 yards, 1 touchdown. 68 of those yards in a touchdown came in Miami's 70-20 blowout over Denver when Miami was already up 56-13 in garbage time. Chosen for his career has 379 yards, just over 5,000 yards, 30 touchdowns. But his last truly productive season in the NFL was 2021. I hope Miami doesn't re-sign him for 2 reasons. Number 1, bad dude, bad guy, been arrested multiple times, resisting arrest, threatening the police, threatened to sexually assault a cop's wife, just a bad human being, not easy to root for. And also because what I saw on the field for him last year was a guy who gave up in the middle of plays. Miami's running the ball. He's not looking for anyone to block. He's just walking around. I saw a guy, the pass would go somewhere else. He'd just stop, walk up the field, not look to get downfield, help block to spring the wide receiver get a run. I don't get it. with the Robbie Chosen Anderson, Robbie Anderson, whatever the hell his name is this week. I don't get it. And if the Dolphins, I know they don't have a ton of cap space, and I don't know if they want to spend draft capital because they don't have picks in round 3 or 4 on a wide receiver. But I don't think Grier and McDaniel can run it back with essentially the same wide receiver room as last year. I think that is truly the definition of insanity. So we'll see if they actually sign Robbie Chosen. It was just a visit. I don't know why you got to visit with a guy who was here last year. Kind of confusing, but is what it is. But that's what they're doing right now at wide receiver. They might be looking to run it back with the same group as last year for the most part. And yeah, that's that. Okay, last topic I want to touch on real quick. I wrote an article Saturday morning that's up at DolphinsTalk.com. And it is titled, let me read the exact title for you so you can follow along. It is Rebuilding the Offensive and Defensive Line is Priority 1 moving forward for the Dolphins. And as we sit today on March 16th, pretty much 1 week into free agency, you can say what you want about the job Chris Grier's done and Mike McDaniel's done, but I think we have a good idea what the composition of this team is for the most part. You look what they are, they have what they have at quarterback with Tua, Mike White. That's a quarterback room. What they have at wide receiver, Hill and Waddle. Maybe they add a true wide receiver 3, Eric Uzakama, Braxton Berrios. We have a good idea. They probably need one more true wide. Excuse me, my voice is going out. They probably need one more true wide receiver. They probably need one more running back for running back depth. But that's small potatoes, not a lot of heavy lifting there. They signed 2 new tight ends this year, upgraded that position group. Kendall Fuller, Jordan Poyer come in. Elliott, Xavier Howard gone. Miami's fine in the secondary. Jordyn Brooks, Shaq Barrett in. Van Ginkel, Jerome Baker out. Miami's probably fine at linebacker. They brought back Jake Bailey and Crossman. Say what you want. Special teams, no real work needs to be done. You look at this roster right now, and you can sort of get a vibe of what this team is going to be in 2024. With they probably don't need any more linebackers. Probably don't need anyone else in the secondary. If they do, it's like small stuff. Maybe one more wide receiver for depth, one more running back for depth. Probably don't need another quarterback. They're all set there. Tight ends are probably fine. Where are the big holes right now? And the big holes right now are both on the offensive line and the defensive line. And from today, March 16th, till day 1 of training camp, Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel's focus should be laser focused in on building up the trenches in both sides of the line of scrimmage for Miami. How do we get better on the offensive line and defensive line? Because right now that's going to be the story of the 2024 Dolphins, because the rest of the roster is kind of, I don't want to say set, but, is what it is. I mean, they might make a small signing here or a small signing there, but we got a good idea of what's going to be there. So let me start with the defensive line. Obviously, Christian Wilkins, Raekwon Davis have left. They've signed Jonathan Harris, Benito Jones, Neville Gallimore, Davion Nixon, and Isaiah Mack. They're the new faces coming in. 5 new players. I don't know. That's 5 new players they've signed in about the span of a week to 10 days. I don't know how many more defensive linemen Chris Grier will sign at this point. Do I expect the Dolphins to address defensive end and defensive tackle in the early rounds of the draft? Yes, I do. Rounds 1 or 2. They could even go with both those picks, take people for that side of the line of scrimmage to help replace Wilkins and Raekwon. Wouldn't be shocked. But do I expect a rookie to come in immediately and make a huge impact on the field in 2024? No, I do not. And out of all the names they brought in, again, Neville Gallimore, Davion Nixon, Isaiah Mack, Jonathan Harris, Benito Jones, to me, they're all clearly downgrades from Wilkins and Raekwon. Wilkins is obvious. Raekwon, you can maybe debate Raekwon and Benito Jones, but at worst, it's a push. And I think Raekwon is more talented than everyone else I listed. So I think the plan is why they signed so many is let's load up the roster with 4, 5, 6 new names on that side of the ball, on that line, and let's hope 1 or 2 hit and 1 or 2 can be decent. But none of those 5 names I named, the new faces, are NFL starters. They're just not NFL starters. Would I like to see the Dolphins add 1 more defensive end or tackle in free agency? Yes. And not just a warm body and name like they've already done. I mean someone who's got like a little bit of a resume. Now maybe they sign that guy in the next week or 2, maybe they wait till after June 1st, but someone who has a better resume than a Jonathan Harris, who's played in 33 games and has 1 sack. Someone who's better than Neville Gallimore, who had 16 tackles in 17 games last year with the Cowboys. Someone who I trust more than a Benito Jones, who's got 40 tackles in 44 NFL games he's played in. Chris Grier lost 2 starters on his defensive line, and he's so far signed 5 backups. And I get it. Money constraints, all that good stuff. I understand it. And they did need depth at those spots anyways, and I'm not naive to the fact Miami might be looking at the draft for a long-term answer to Christian Wilkins, but having another known commodity with a better, more proven resume just to come in, even if it's a 1-year deal, I think is needed, especially if the Dolphins really want to get back to where they were last year, which is in the playoffs and maybe hopefully further. So that's kind of how I view the line of scrimmage and sort of the front 3 on defense. I get it. Anthony Weaver likes to rotate a lot of guys in, but the Dolphins brought in 5 guys, and out of those 5 guys, maybe 2 are going to make the roster after training camp. 3 tops. I think a couple of the guys are going to cut. Probably not going to make the team, and none of them are really impact players, so they'll probably add someone in the draft, which is great. I'm all for it, but if they went out there, we signed Shaq Barrett 1-year deal. Guy over 30, probably in the last year or 2 of his NFL career. And if we could get someone like that as a end or a tackle to put on that defensive line, 1-year deal, not too much big money. 1 year $8 million, 1 year $7 million, 1 year $9 million, maybe not even that much, might even be less. I feel better. And someone who's actually started in this league and has a little production, he can point to being like, no, I can really play. So that's where I see them on the defensive line. The other line of scrimmage for Miami, the offensive line, to me, this is a work in progress. We know what we got and we know what we don't got. You have Austin Jackson and Teron Armstead as your 2 bookend offensive tackles, which is fine. That's fine. And then Aaron Brewer in its center, which is also fine. What's the plan for the rest? And for the rest, it's not just a 2-guard spot. We know Armstead's not giving you 17 games. He just ain't. So is Miami going to bring back Kendall Lamb to back up Armstead? If yes, great. If not, then who's going to back him up? Are they going to look to get an offensive tackle in round 1 of the draft to be the backup left tackle for when Armstead goes down, not if, and to be the long-term answer at left tackle after this year when Armstead, is probably let go by the Dolphins? Or are the Dolphins fine with Keon Smith, who's already on the roster, played well at times last year and was, impressive in training camp last year when he did get on the field a little bit at right tackle and such. He wasn't bad. Not great, but he wasn't bad. Are they okay with Keon Smith as that backup left tackle in 2024? We're going to see in the coming weeks and months. But what's the plan there? We don't know as of today. Robert Hunt's gone. Is the plan to replace him just having an open competition between Liam Eichenberg and Robert Jones? If so, that's a clear downgrade from where we were in 2023. Or are we going to look to add someone at left or at right guard? And what's the plan at left guard? Again, I don't know. I mean, if the plan's to start Robert Jones at right guard and Liam at left guard with Armstead, Austin Jackson, and Brewer, that's not going to instill a lot of confidence here in the hearts and minds of Dolphins fans. So, again, round 1 or 2, would not be shocked if the Dolphins go offensive tackle, and maybe they play that offensive tackle at left guard for a year, and then next year he moves out to left tackle. He moves out to left tackle to replace Armstead, and if something happens to Armstead, he's your left tackle this year. I think would make a lot of sense, honestly. We'll see if it happens. I don't see them drafting a guard center in the early rounds. It's just not Chris Grier's MO. Again, Austin Jackson round 1, tackle. Robert Hunt was drafted as a tackle, and then he got moved to guard when he failed a tackle. And Liam Eichenberg was drafted round 2, also was a right tackle. He failed a right tackle. They moved him around everywhere. So I think if Chris Grier is going to use a pick in round 1 or 2 on the offensive line, it's going to be for an offensive tackle, and maybe he plays a year at guard. But what's the plan with this offensive line? Now, again, they're going to get a ton of money to free up after June 1st with Xavier Howard's money off the books. They got some money now, and they could always have a restructure with Hill or Chubb and sign an offensive lineman if there's one out there they like. I don't know. I'd have to look even what's out there to sign. But I think right now we know guard is a big question mark, both at right guard and left guard. And we'll see. Because if the plan is, let's see what we got with Eichenberg and Robert Jones and Keon Smith in 2024, then all the rumbling, if that's the game plan, where we're going to go Austin Jackson, Austin Jackson, Robert Jones, Brewer, Eichenberg, and Armstead. We heard those rumblings this past week, I should say, from Cam Wolf of the NFL Network, Sun Sentinel, Miami Herald, coming out of Miami Gardens at 2024, soft reset, folks, going to take a step back. They're going to sort of get the salary cap in order, get some comp picks for next year and stockpile some of those and, get cheaper, get younger with some players and sort of, let's see what you got in house with a Cam Smith. Let's see what you got in house with guys like Robert Jones and Liam Eichenberg, see if they can be, long-term starters who can play significant snaps and be cheaper so you don't have to go out there and buy guys to start. If they go with that plan, then this truly is a reset year because then you're hoping guys like Cam Smith can develop to long-term starters. Liam Eichenberg's final year of his deal, you hope he plays well enough where you can then, sign him to an extension to keep him at either spot at guard, and he also going to be your number 2 center, I guess. Same thing with Robert Jones. So if they don't add anybody in free agency here on the offensive line, then 2024 truly is a reset. Look, it's a reset anyways. I just know it from what I've been told. And plus, all these people and all these outlets, the Herald, Sun Sentinel, and if they're not lying, they don't have any incentive to lie. They are reporting what they're being told. But this, soft reset thing, it screams of that if they're going to run it back with these same offensive linemen they already have under contract and they don't add anybody in free agency. Yeah, they're probably going to add someone in the draft, but again, draft's unknown. And look at Chris Grier's track record of drafting offensive linemen. Austin Jackson, it took to year 4 for him to be good. Liam Eichenberg, last year for him is year 3. It took him to year 3 to be serviceable at any spot. I mean, year 1, year 2, you couldn't put him on the field. He was a turnstile. Year 3, he was like okay, where he could play and not hurt you. Robert Hunt, he was good year 2, but year 1 he wasn't. So even if you draft an offensive lineman year 1, the odds of him being able to come in day 1 and start and produce and not hurt your offensive line are slim. Which then it's like, well, how are you going to fight for playoffs? But how are you going to protect Tua if you're going to run it back with a lot of the same group of offensive linemen? And that's tough. So, I know there's a lot. It's only March 16th, folks. I get it. And I'm not saying the sky is falling. That's a straw man argument. What I'm saying is looking at both the offensive line and the defensive line, moving forward from this day, that should be the hyper focus of Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel. That's where they should spend a lot of their resources, whatever money they still have left under the cap. That's where they should be spending draft capital on both of those lines of scrimmages. Because like I said, they're good enough at running back, wide receiver, quarterback, tight end, linebacker, secondary. They got the pieces in place there. Yeah, sure, you always like more. You can always add a guy who can help it. They could add one more safety. Great. They could add one more wide receiver. Great. They could add one more running back. Great. But if they don't, it's like, okay, we got enough talent there. What they don't have enough talent, though, is offensive line and defensive line. That's kind of the point I'm nailing home here. That's where I think moving forward, any signings, major signings, need to be on both lines of scrimmages. And when it comes to the draft, I think right now, with picks 21 and 55, and there's a long way to go, and who knows, they might even make trades and trade away some of those picks. I don't know. I think you're looking at defensive end, defensive tackle, offensive tackle, wide receiver. We'll get into the wide receiver conversation another day, another night. Not going to do that tonight. But the other 3, I think, are probably your primary spots for pick 21 and 55. If they just sit still and don't move up, move down, trade back, all that good stuff, I think those 2 picks, one of them is going to be either an interior tackle end, Christian Wilkins, who can play end and also slide over and play tackle on that front. And I also think it'll probably be an offensive tackle who might play guard for a year and then kicks outside when Armstead is gone after this year. And he is your left tackle of the future. I really think that's where they're going because I think that if the Dolphins want to get back to where they were, which was in the playoffs, those are the 2 areas that are the weak spots on this roster right now. A lot of time to fix it, but I think we know what this team is going to be in 2024. We know the key players at every other position group. They're not going to get a blockbuster at any other position group, but the offensive line they could, and the defensive line they could as well, and we'll see what they do. It's going to be interesting to monitor, again, especially with the offensive line. If they go out there and sign a veteran guard, wouldn't be surprised, but if they don't, That's a sign they're going to be happy with the Keon Smiths, Liam Eichenberg, Robert Joneses of the world, Lester Cottons of the world. And, Chris Grier famously said last year regarding the offensive line, you guys are more worried about this than we are. Everyone laughed and didn't think he was telling the truth. LOL, he was telling the truth. So it might be one of those things again where we're all like, really? Robert Jones and Liam Eichenberg, really? That's what you're going to start? And he'll sit there at a podium probably in the next month or two and be like, oh, you guys are more worried about it than we are, and we're going to go through that again. That could be the case. That very well might be the case. But, yeah, just want to talk about that because I think, as we move into this second week of free agency and beyond, offensive line, defensive line are the spots that badly still need to be addressed. Still. All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Hope you enjoyed the show. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, wherever, at Dolphins Talk. Go to the website, DolphinsTalk.com. Check out all the new articles, news bits, podcasts. We got you covered every which way till Sunday when it comes to Miami Dolphins news. And again, wherever you're listening to this podcast, whether Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, YouTube, Google Play, subscribe. When news breaks, we'll have a show, and we'll see what happens on Sunday. If there's any news, we'll probably come out with another show. If not, we'll probably have one on Monday regardless. So thank you all for listening. Have a great weekend. Have a happy St. Patrick's Day on Sunday. We'll talk to you again after a while. Don't forget, for St. Patrick's Day, we must still put an end to highway profanity.
Thank you for listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast. Be sure to visit DolphinsTalk.com every day for all of your latest Miami Dolphins news.